You know that saying, curiosity killed the cat and satisfaction brought it back? Well, as cringy as it might sound, I am the cat. And one of the reasons I started covering Twin Peaks is that the rabbit hole goes so deep. But when I picked up The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, I thought I had found exactly what I was looking for. More of the world, more of the story, another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Little did I know that this would be one of those rare pieces of extended lore that I really, truly did not want to be a part of, because it reads like a real teenager wrote it, not like an author expanding a TV universe, but like an actual girl's private thoughts. And beyond that, it is extremely graphic. And so, just like that, Jennifer Lynch made me feel like I had no business being there, like an intruder, not just reading someone's diary, but stumbling into their deepest, darkest secrets uninvited. But of course, I kept reading. Hey everyone, I'm Nikanak, and I make videos about everything I question and overthink, and today I want to talk about Laura Palmer's life. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Dear Diary, my name is Laura Palmer. You were the last gift I opened, and I could hardly wait to come upstairs and start to tell you all about myself and my family. You shall be the one I confide in the most. I promise to tell you everything that happens, everything I feel, everything I desire, and every single thing I think. There are some things I can't tell anyone. I promise to tell these things to you.
Now, as we all know, from a distance, Twin Peaks seems like one of those towns where nothing bad ever happens, until the early morning of February 24th, 1989, when the illusion of small-town American innocence is shattered. Laura Palmer is found dead, wrapped in plastic. Now, what we didn't know in season 1 is the full picture of the years leading up to the events that took place on the night of February 23rd, 1989, that Laura had been living through sustained sexual and physical abuse at the hands of her father, Leland, aka the figure she called Bob. And throughout her diary, she writes about his night visits. At first, she explains them as nightmares, but by the halfway point of the book, Laura and I, and all of us who read the book, start to realize that these are in fact her memories resurfacing. And although the diary never really says when it started happening, I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that it started a very long time ago. And I think this poem that she wrote is proof of that.
Something just came to me. A memory of skipping. I was small, looking up at him, before he told me to lie down, or to say things, before he told me that opening my mouth was bad, that we had a secret, before he began to turn me inside out with his dirty claws, before I sat on the tiny hill we used to skip, hold hands, talk about what we saw. He told me what to see, but I didn't see it. I've been blind, I think, ever since the skipping stopped. I want to be left alone like other people are. I want to learn about this soft white suit I wear the way everyone else does. I want to forget the things that suddenly come to me. Something very bad is happening. Why is it happening to me? I think it is real. I think it is real.
And this is the moment, I think, where she starts to realize who Bob actually is. Because up until this point, there's no other man in her life. There's no stranger. There's just a memory of skipping. A small girl looking up at him. Someone who used to hold her hand and tell her what to see. Her father. I know I might be wrong here, but this is how I read the situation with Leland and Bob. I don't think Bob is a demon or a malevolent possessing spirit in the literal sense. I think Bob is something Laura's mind created, or rather something her mind needed in order to survive a truth too devastating to face. Now at some point, probably when she was really young, she opened her eyes in the night and she saw her father, and the pain of that, the absolute shattering horror of recognizing him, was more than her mind could bear. So it gave her Bob instead, a monster she could name that wasn't her father. And because Laura wasn't the only one who saw Bob, we know for a fact Sarah saw Bob in season 1, Cooper encounters Bob in season 1, and I do think that Leo potentially also saw Bob because of what Laura writes here.
Dare I say that Leo Johnson and Laura Palmer are cut from the same cloth?
But basically, what I'm trying to say, if Bob were purely a dissociation Laura's mind created, he would exist only in her mind. But he doesn't. So I think Bob represents something broader, not just Leland's evil, but the evil itself, the thing that makes people capable of doing what Leland did. But going back to Laura, and every single time it happened, every time the degradation, the fear, the abuse came into that room or took her into the woods, she would turn around and look for something good, something pure, something that could make her feel like herself again. And yet, no matter how hard she reached for it, she couldn't convince herself she deserved it.
I think I am a very bad person. Tomorrow I will start a new way of living. I will not think any more bad thoughts. I will not think any more about sex. Maybe he will stop coming if I try harder to be good. Maybe I could be like Donna. She is a good person. I am bad. Laura. P.S. Promise. I promise to be good.
Now, at her core, Laura held this desperate belief that if she could just be virtuous enough, flawless enough, then the horror would finally stop. And if goodness had a face in Laura's world, it was Donna Hayward. Now, Donna, to Laura, wasn't just a best friend. She unknowingly was the living proof that goodness was possible, that some girls got to just be safe and loved and normal. And every time Laura felt herself slipping, she'd invoke Donna's name like a go-to safety net or like a mantra. I'll be more like Donna. I'll be good. I promise. And it wasn't just Donna herself that Laura loved. It was everything Donna had. The innocence, safety, and conventional stability that was brutally absent from her own life. While Laura was trapped in a nightmare, the Hayward home provided a sanctuary where she could temporarily escape her trauma and the dark realities she was involved in. And at the center of that home was someone Laura wrote about with a tenderness that's unbearable to read.
You know, I think out of all of the men I know in the world, Dr. Hayward has been the most loving to me. He is unselfish, kind, and always shows me a gentle smile of inspiration or forgiveness or anything that somehow always perfectly fills the gap I feel inside me. 13 years ago, he brought me into the world and held tight to my small body for just a moment. In daydreams, I imagine that moment to be one of the warmest there ever was in my life. I love him for holding me, that frightened young child, fresh to the air and light, and for making me believe, without even a word, that he would hold me again if I ever needed him to. He reminds me of someone I wouldn't mind seeing every day of my life. A grandfather's sweetness inside a father's helping hand.
However, when even that felt too far away, when Donna and Doc Hayward and all the good things in the world still couldn't quiet what was happening inside her, Laura turned to God.
I hope that if there is a God, he will understand that I am trying to keep clean. And if this is a test that he is giving me, I'll find a way to pass it. I bet it is a test. I bet God wants me to prove that I can take orders, or maybe that I'm not afraid to die and come be with him.
But what do you do when you reach out to a friend and can't open up? Can't say the full truth? When you pray to a God and everything goes unanswered? At one point, Laura writes something that I think is one of the most visceral expressions of rage and helplessness in the entire diary. She screams, metaphorically, at the sky, at nature, at God, furious that the world keeps sheltering the man who is destroying her, that the trees, the woods, the earth itself seems to protect him rather than her, that no scream she makes will escape, and that he knows that the planet will not betray him. And once that understanding sets in, that no one is going to see her, that no one is going to stop this, the goodness stops feeling like it can save her, and she has to find other ways to survive. So by the time Laura is 15 or 16, I think, she resorts to what feels like the only solution. She starts to deprive herself of sleep so that for not one moment is she left unguarded and vulnerable.
Dear Diary, I cannot let myself sleep because I have to see Bob when he comes through the window. I have to be ready. Need I say, I have now crossed over into a dimension of intense sleep deprivation. 3 days and 4 nights.
And when the sleep deprivation reached its limit, when she couldn't sustain it on willpower alone, Bobby Briggs introduced her to cocaine, and the same is true of her sexuality. It was primarily about asserting control over her own body, when so much had been taken away from her without her consent. Choosing who she was with, and often seeking out older men specifically, was a way of reclaiming some agency. And most importantly, this nocturnal lifestyle kept her out of that house. However, through all of it, the sleep deprivation, the cocaine, Jacques, Leo, the nightmares, Laura Palmer kept showing up for other people. One of the most heartbreaking threads in the diary is Laura's relationship with Johnny Horn.
But it's mostly nice to be around Johnny because he loves me no matter what I do when I'm not around him. He doesn't hurt me or tease me or want to sleep with me or tie me up or cut me or any of the millions of things I feel like people do to me all the time.
Johnny loved her without wanting anything from her, and for Laura, that was so rare it was almost sacred. She found solace in him, and I think it's because his innocence was something she had lost. She was 16 years old, but in a lot of ways, she was still the 13-year-old girl, or possibly younger because we don't know when it started, who had her childhood ripped away from her before she understood what was happening. And ultimately, she was forced to grow up far too fast. And spending time with Johnny was, I think, her way of staying connected to the part of herself that never got the chance to just be a kid. And I think this is the same reason the Haywards mattered so much. Donna got to have a childhood. Laura could see it, be near it, even if she couldn't have it herself.
Today, I needed a fresh start. My time with Johnny was wonderful and, dare I say, almost spiritual. I was able to stop pitying myself and to recall some of the happiest times in my life, as well as some of the most sad. Each story helped me as much as it did Johnny. I had a chance to realize how far away I had kept happiness and how much I missed it.
And with that same care she had for Johnny, Laura threw herself into the Meals on Wheels program. And although, yes, it did start with a little bit of a competition between Laura and Shelley, mainly because I think Laura was just jealous of Shelley that she had Leo, but ultimately it doesn't matter because she went through with it. And through it, she met Harold.
I love Harold's tenderness, and most often feel wonderful when I am with him, and when I think about him.
And because I've never met this character, I don't know how close they grew or what their full story was. But I do know this: she trusted him with the most private and damning piece of evidence she had, her diary, and she gave it to him for safekeeping just days before she died. However, outside of those quiet moments with Johnny, with Harold, her life told a very different story still. On the day of her 16th birthday, Laura Palmer finds out she is pregnant.
I have some news that comes to me like a slap across the face. I am pregnant. 7.5 weeks pregnant.
And what devastated me the most wasn't the pregnancy itself, it was her reaction to it. Because reading between the lines of this diary, I think Laura Palmer would have wanted to be a mother someday. I don't even think I need to read between the lines. She said it verbatim.
I wished that whoever this child was would come back when the time is right, when there is a marriage, a union that you were born of, not responsible for. You, child, should be a gift to those who are ready, not a burden like so many others before you. Come back, child, when I am no longer a child myself.
And instead, at 16, alone, not with Donna, not with her mother, not with Maddie, she was making a decision no child should have to make by themselves. And after the abortion, Laura is driving home, crying by herself. And when she does arrive at home, her mother Sarah catches her on the stairs and asks how the job interview went. Laura responds with a fine, but then she writes something that has stuck with me ever since.
In that same moment, I was aware of Mom's stare. Pure jealousy at my back.
Now, why would a mother look at her daughter with jealousy in that moment? This is the question I keep coming back to, because jealousy implies desire. It implies wanting something the other person has. And what did Laura have in that moment? She had just come home from an abortion in physical pain, 19 days sober, and all alone. And this is where a light bulb went off for me. Unless Sarah already knew on some level what Laura had really been doing, not consciously, but that psychic connection that Laura describes throughout the diary, that wordless understanding between them.
But sometimes Mom and I think the same thoughts, have the same dreams.
Moreover, in season 1, Donna tells James that Sarah and Laura shared some kind of vision seeing abilities. Then what did Sarah feel all those nights her daughter had dreamed of Bob? What did she sense and choose not to follow to its conclusion? And I might be wrong here, like I might be wrong with what or who Bob is, but I think Sarah Palmer was in complete denial, and I think Laura gave us that proof. In one of her entries, she writes about her mother with this mix of longing and suspicion, wanting them to be close, sensing that her mother would understand her if Sarah let herself understand, but then wondering if Bob makes her mother uncomfortable, wondering if her father knows Bob too, and then writing that her mother won't let them talk about him because it upsets everyone. Now, there is so much to unpack here. First of all, the sentence, "Mom won't let us talk about him," not can't, not doesn't know, won't, sounds to me like a mother who has encountered the subject of Bob in her household and has shut it down. Second, the word us, not won't let me talk about him, us, which means this was a household dynamic, a collective agreement, spoken or unspoken, to not look directly at what was living inside that house. And third, maybe Dad knows Bob too. And while Laura phrases this as a maybe, I think she's wondering whether her father and her abuser are the same person, although I might be reading a little bit too much into this one. And finally, I believe Laura gives her mother an out. She says Sarah comes from a generation that doesn't talk about uncomfortable things, but immediately after that grace, she names Bob specifically. So she wasn't avoiding uncomfortable topics in general, Sarah was avoiding that specific thing. And I don't know about you, but you don't avoid something you've never encountered. And then there was Jacoby, of all people. Now, whether you are new to this channel, and if you are, welcome. Sorry I said it so late in the video, and if you're coming back to my videos and you're a longtime viewer, welcome back. But I did say this in my Twin Peaks breakdowns, and I'll say it once again gladly. I do not like Jacoby. For one, he gives me the heebie-jeebies. Two, I believe his patient-doctor conduct is unethical because he is clearly in love with Laura. But despite all of that, he said something to her that she needed to hear a long time ago.
He just lets me talk, and I will sometimes try to shock him with the details of my darker self. Yet he continues to accept them. Accept me. Always recognizing that the lighter part of me never wanted to do them in the first place. And so he forgives me. I know this may sound very sick and mean, perhaps, but I am almost consumed at times with hatred for him because never has he turned to me and confirmed my deepest fears, that I am becoming like Bob. Bad. Maybe it is the way he says it is. I have simply forgotten how to be loved.
Whatever I think about him, the last line, "I have simply forgotten how to be loved," isn't entirely off, but it's just sad it has to be Jacoby who says it rather than anyone else who is actually looking out for her best interests. And unfortunately, even though that wasn't enough to save her, I think it really mattered that someone at least once saw her whole. Now, Laura also in her diary mentions her encounter with Margaret, aka the Log Lady. They meet outside 1400 River Road, and Margaret tells her that she was told in a dream to be there, and Laura had the same dream as Margaret. Now, what's interesting about the conversation is that Margaret very cryptically, or in the Log Lady style, tells Laura about the woods.
She said that sometimes the woods are a place to learn about things and to learn about yourself. Other times, the woods are a place for other creatures to be, and it is not for us. She said that sometimes people go camping and learn things they shouldn't. Children are prey sometimes.
Now, maybe, just like everything else, who knows? I'm reading too much into this, but Laura's very first diary entry, written on her 12th birthday, mentions that
My cousin Madeline, Maddie for short, is visiting tomorrow for a whole week. She and Donna and I are going to build a fort in the woods and camp out if Mom will let us. I know Dad will. He likes the woods as much as I do.
Now, reading that at the beginning, it seems sweet. Reading it after everything else, it doesn't, because I think Margaret, and I know I might be reaching, but I think Margaret saw something in those woods. I think she might have seen Laura and her dad in the woods, and I think that encounter with Laura was her trying to say, "I see you, I know what happened," even if she couldn't say it plainly. Now, the last entries of the diary are Laura in freefall. The coping mechanisms are failing, the fragmented memories are surfacing, and then, in the space where the torn out pages used to be, she finally arrives at the realization she had been circling for years.
I know who he is. I know exactly who and what Bob is. And I have to tell everyone. I have to tell someone and make them believe.
And even at the end of everything, it was absolutely gut-wrenching and maddening to see that she is still explaining that she never wanted this, that she tried, that she did her best. And what breaks my heart is that any rational person reading this can see that. Of course she didn't want it. Of course she tried. But she felt she had to say it anyway because she had internalized so deeply the idea that she was the problem.
I did not want to have certain memories and realizations of him. I only did what any of us can do in any situation. My very best. Love, Laura.
Now, I don't know who physically took Laura's life on February 23rd, but I know who was destroying her for years before that. Leland, whether you believe Bob was a literal entity or a dissociation Laura's mind created, was the one who broke her down piece by piece. The man who was supposed to protect her, guide her, and be her father. And Sarah, you cannot share that connection Laura describes. You cannot live in that house and remain completely unaware. And her mental decline after Laura's death feels to me like a woman whose denial finally ran out of places to hide. But here is what I keep coming back to. Laura spent the last years of her life trying to be good, showing up for Johnny, delivering meals to strangers, praying to a god she wasn't sure could hear her, protecting Donna from the truth, protecting Bobby from herself, holding herself together with cocaine and sleeplessness and a sheer force of will. And at the very end, she was still apologizing, still explaining herself, and still saying, "I only did my best. Please don't hate me. Please believe me." And I truly hope when I get to season 2 that her diary made sure of it. But what about you? Did you read The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer? Did you notice something I might have missed? Did you, as much as one can, enjoy reading this? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you're still here, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very shortly for season 2 of Twin Peaks. Till next time, bye!